What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 447 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with a three-man pod with Drew Dinkmeyer and Austin Yamada. First time doing a podcast with Austin. Super pumped here. We are we are ready for the second round. We'll talk a lot about the Pacers and Cavs series coming up. But Austin, first time on the pod. How's it feeling? How's it going?
Good. I'm excited. I always listened to these last year, and so I'm happy to be part of it.
So good. And Dink, how you feeling today?
Yeah, I mean, after my first round performance, I need to bring in reinforcements on capping these series previews because it was a very difficult first round for me. We still have some experience going on here in the first round with the end of the series. It was a couple of game sixes that I'm looking forward to seeing, and we'll talk through. But yeah, happy to have Austin on and get his takes. Austin's been helping us on the prop side of things and very sharp bettor just in general. So very excited to have him on the pod joining us here today.
Yeah, we'll talk some picks for the Cavs and Pacers series. Curious what you guys think there. But yeah, let's start with the Clippers and the Nuggets, who, man, we were ready to bury the Nuggets after what happened in Game 3. They had everything in control. Kawhi's going off. They've got the two-game kind of figured out with the extra help they've been bringing. But Austin, what's going on with the Clippers? Like, why are they so bad? Should note James Harden's usage has cratered. His field goal attempts have dropped every single game in this series. What's with that? We saw Zoo like really be a big part of the offense here. But what have you been seeing from why the Clippers have really struggled so badly in the last two games?
I'm not sure it's much of a Clippers thing. I think it's more of a Nuggets thing. Basically, like Game 3 was really probably the low point for the Nuggets in the series, not just in terms of the score, but in terms of like Jamal was sick, Russ was out. Aaron Gordon said he couldn't jump because of his calf, and then MPJ said he couldn't lift his arm because of his left shoulder. And I think like the Clips at this point in time, no one's healthy fully, but I think the Clips just were, boat racing them in health. And it sort of like as the series goes on, you see, the Jamal's not sick anymore. Aaron Gordon with the game-winning dunk clearly can jump, and MPJ looks okay. It's a non-shooting shoulder, so. I think the market got really happy with the Clips, and it was really just a reflection of all of these things going wrong with the Nuggets. But as the series has gone on, sort of some of those Nuggets issues have kind of been less of an issue. And then also we can talk adjustments in a sec, but like I do think the Clips have more adjustments to make. I don't think the Nuggets do, but the Nuggets have already like turned it up to 100. They're playing their starters basically full minutes. It's like a 6.5 man rotation. So. Yeah, I think it's just the Nuggets' 5 best players playing a lot and them getting healthier.
Do you think it's like what's up with Harden though? Do you think it's a little bit of Christian Brown, a little bit of gap help, a little bit of lack of aggression? His touch time's been down. Before I throw it to Dink, have you seen anything there? Because I've been trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and like even like James Harden can get off gap help all the time. He gets the ball back. He hasn't been getting the ball back. Like, have you seen anything? I haven't really seen much. I just think that it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I do think that Denver's keen in on him a bit, but it's not something that he hasn't seen before in his career.
Yeah.
I think it's more, I think there's so much of the season, if you look at samples, where 1 to 2 of the Clippers, main 4 scorers have been out. But like when they're all healthy, like 4 of their 5 starters are actually pretty high usage players, and like they've been really emphasizing Zoo, especially early on in games. And then you're getting like 38 to 40 of Kawhi. And playoff Kawhi's usage is always pretty strong. So I think the market always opens Harden's lines too high in the series. And that like if you really look at the samples, it's really being buoyed by a lot of minutes without some of the other guys over the course of the season. And now we have all 4. And we've seen that with Norman Powell as well. Just when all 4 of these guys are on the floor, there's only so many shots to go around, especially with like two lower pace teams. So and then also like worth pointing out, I don't know if this has come into effect, in terms of what they've talked about, but like James Harden, for as he is and as much load as he carries, when he shoots the ball, it's not a very efficient shot. Like he's one of the least efficient players at actually shooting the ball over the course of the season. And so like I don't know if this is a conscious de-emphasis or not, but like some of you're getting a higher points per possession when you're having Norman Powell, Ivica Zubac, and Kawhi Leonard shoot the ball.
Yeah, they've been giving Zoo the ball at the elbow a ton. His elbow touches have like doubled in the last 2 games compared to the first 3 games. But Dink, what have you been seeing from these 2 guys, and where are we at if the Clippers could kind of come back? Obviously, they've got home court tonight, and then Game 7 would be in Denver over the weekend.
Yeah, the big story of the series is twofold for me. Austin highlighted kind of the directionally, why we were getting lighter and lighter on the Nuggets was just the fact that there was like a lack of confidence in health and a lack of confidence in depth, a lack of confidence in adjustments, and they sort of weathered the storm there, seemingly getting healthier now. The other part for me is identity. I feel like the Nuggets know exactly what they're going to in every important possession in the series. They know the Jokic Murray 2-man game is their bread and butter, and they're going to go to it over and over and over again. I think the Clippers struggle at times with figuring out their identity from a possession to possession basis. And so I think some of those like late game crunch time possession situations just aren't as clean, because I think they're trying to figure out, okay, are we doing Harden Zoo pick and roll, which has been kind of the basis of our offense for most of the year, or are we going to hunt matchups with Kawhi, which is, what Kawhi's been most effective at in his career, especially in the playoffs. And then when Jamal Murray's on Kawhi, it's like, okay, we really want to hunt that matchup. And so I think the offense and the rhythm and pacing has just gotten a little bit off as they're like trying to figure out their identity in late game situations. And I think that's why the Clippers have not been as successful in kind of the tight games in this one. They've lost 2 of the 3 tight games essentially. And then with Harden specifically, I think he's a very rhythm based player. I think some of that is throwing him out of rhythm. And then, in game 5, he was asked to start guarding Jokic a little bit on the other end as well, which is, going to take out a big portion of, energy trying to defend somebody who's just much, much bigger than you. And to do that, you're going to get the ball in Kawhi's hands offensively more to take a little bit of the load there. They're also sort of like hiding Kawhi defensively in the corner, which is just not what we've been used to seeing, but I think they know that like they need him to not be fully engaged and locked in defensively if they can get offensively Kawhi for 40 minutes a night. So like you're just seeing like this team that I think has more chess pieces on the board to move around, but has a lot of sort of like specialists, and their star players are also becoming a little bit more specialized in their role in the series than, dominant on kind of both ends, which is the thing that Kawhi was throughout most of his career. We haven't seen that kind of defensive impact on this series quite as much from Kawhi. And then asking Harden to take on more defensive responsibilities, sort of turning him a little bit more one-way-ish in terms of his impact. So I think they're sort of struggling for identity. They still have all these bench pieces that are really interesting to kind of mix and match with Bogdanovich and Derek Jones Jr. Obviously, Chris Dunn has played up and down in his impact in the series, but I think they haven't found the right balance. And I think Denver is just kind of in the pocket now with their 2-man game and like very, very comfortable. Jamal being healthier and putting up the big numbers, I think in game 5 was like, okay, this is playoff Denver. This is where we're at with the Nuggets. So I think really it's like, for me, it's a team that has done it a bunch before, feels very confident in these tight, close games and late game situations, and has a lot of confidence in the best player in the world to pull it out. And Jokic has been great defensively in the series as well after a very poor regular season. Been great at rim protection in this series, and that's really kind of helped the Nuggets quite a bit. So yeah, I still think Clips push this to a game 7 is my expectation. Then from there, anything goes. We'll see. But I've been surprised by Denver's ability to kind of withstand all the injuries, and then their ability to, like the Ty Lue's inability to crack the code on how to make Denver feel one-dimensional. He hasn't been able to do it yet.
Yeah, and Jamal's been just like, obviously he had the 43-point flamethrower, but he had been getting pretty good looks and had been missing them. But he looked way more in rhythm, had like just more burst. Adelman said he had like more lift off his shots, and certainly looked that way. But they were leaving him. Like he had a lot of like really clean looks off that, even off ball actions too. So Austin, you had mentioned you thought about some adjustments here. I'll throw it to you there. What are the what's on the table for the Clippers to even this up tonight?
Yeah, I think one that we have been expecting, and it hasn't happened yet, but I could see it coming tonight, would be less Chris Dunn. And Chris Dunn over the course of the regular season, like, shot a good percentage from 3, but there's a lot of studies that like spacing comes more from 3-point aggression than it does 3-point percentage. Like just the ability to get your shot off quick makes you have to close out quicker than a guy who's shooting, even if they shoot 38%, if they're doing it with a really slow load, like you have time to recover. And like Chris Dunn is just not a high volume shooter. He takes a long time to load. And like, if you look at it, like they're leaving him wide open. Even if he starts shooting, making his threes like he did last game, you can really help off and have more time to recover. You can get deeper into help. And so And if you think about like the Clippers and Nuggets are the two lowest 3-point attempt rate teams in the NBA matched up against each other. And like even guys like Kawhi, who shoots good percentages, not shooting a ton of catch and shoot. James Harden is mostly off the dribble too. Like Norman Powell is really their only starter that actually is a legitimate catch and shoot 3-point attempt guy. So, maybe swapping Chris Dunn for someone like Nick Batum or Bogdanovich, whose minutes have actually gone pretty well the last couple games, is something that seems obvious to me. Just less help on Harden, gives Zoo more space in the paint. So I do expect, especially if they fall down earlier in the game, for Chris Dunn to be de-emphasized in the second and fourth quarters.
Yeah, does that start right away? That's been an issue. The last two games, the Nuggets have had a plus 34 net rating in the first quarter. The first quarter has started the game. They obviously did a big comeback in game 4. Do they just start that right away? Like, Jamal went off anyways. Jamal's going to get to his spots. Like, do you just prioritize offense? You've been struggling there. It's been a 90 offensive rating for the Clippers there. So, Dink, do you just start that way off the bat?
Ty Lue has generally been comfortable making adjustments and moving pieces around, but not as much with the starting lineup. Is my memory is he tends to kind of stick with starters and then just have early pulls and early substitutions. So I'm interested to see. I mean, the other question mark on this is like Derek Jones Jr.'s full health, because I think he'd be the guy you'd want to start in those situations. I think you'd want his length on Jamal Murray to kind of help there, or if you're putting Kawhi on Jamal Murray late in game situations, Derek Jones Jr. out there on Aaron Gordon. I think that's the path that they'd go. I'd be surprised if they went with Bogdanovich right off the bat. I think it leaves you a little bit vulnerable defensively right off the start. They've survived Bogdan's defense with zone by kind of going there, and I just don't think they're going to start the game in that sense. So I kind of think it's what we saw last game. It could be Batum. That could be the other option. I would say Batum was a sub at the 8-minute mark in the last game for Chris Dunn. So it was like kind of that approach, like quick pull. So maybe they do it with Batum or Derek Jones Jr. I don't think it would be with Bogdanovich. But I do think that if Chris Dunn is pulled from the starting lineup, I think his floor gets really low in terms of minutes, because there's not like his most useful skill is trying to be the trail defender in the 2-man game with Jokic and Jamal Murray. And if that's not working, there's not a lot else out there that he's really adding value on. And most of the struggles have been kind of on the offensive side for the Clippers.
Yeah, I think he still starts. Go ahead.
I forgot to add that, like, I think Ben Simmons might go away for the rest of the series.
No doubt.
Like he has 2 made field goals and he has 11 fouls in the series. And like also like if you de-emphasize Chris Dunn or start using him more in the second unit, like that's ball handling and that's defense. Like what else is Ben Simmons used for? So I think like it may be 11 minutes and then last game was 6 minutes, so it's not that much you're taking out. But I think every little bit helps the Clippers, right? Just like playing their better players more minutes.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I think that, running a little more pick and roll more to the side and having Chris Dunn more like away from the ball and having Norm Powell like one pass away, that's something that they've always had, like Chris Dunn one pass away. That was always like, I was like, what's up with that? I thought I should be further away from the action. So I think that's something that I would keep an eye on there. But yeah, I'm with you. I think they kind of start the same way from a personal standpoint. Ben's going away for sure. But yeah, Dink, you said it sounds like you're thinking Nuggets in 7 here.
I don't know. I'm still sort of perplexed, because I really do think the Clippers are a better roster with more alternatives, and I think the Nuggets are skating on a thinner margin. But the best player in the world playing 42 to 44 minutes a night is just really tough to overcome. And Jokic in pretty much every lineup combinations is a plus value. The recipe for beating Denver has been winning the non-Jokic minutes in the past, and the Clippers are unable to pile up big wins in those spots, and so. Yeah, I'm starting to lean more towards Denver in 7. I think the Clippers will be able to take care of things tonight. I think they've played well at home. The crowd's been great. So I think we get a game 7, which would be really fun. The series has been awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I'm also scarred from Denver last year, game 7 at home. I thought they were taking care of business in a big way, and then complete collapse in the second half against Ant and the Wolves. So I'm still thinking the series is very much up for grabs. I'm a little bit mad at myself when we talked about last podcast that at 2-2 the odds were still like heavily weighted towards the Clippers. I should have bought off some of my Clippers exposure with Denver at like plus 130 at 2-2 with home court the rest of the way. Like I'm pretty upset with myself that I didn't take a little off the table from my early Clippers exposure. But yeah, I'd say I lean Denver in 7 now.
Yeah, home court hasn't been that big. We'll talk about the Detroit series in a little bit, but I'm with you. I think that Denver and Denver. Austin, where you at on this?
Yeah, I'm Denver in 7 as well.
Yeah.
Although, like, if we're just looking at the betting market, like, I think there's value, a little bit of value on Denver, both of the next two games. And like what Drew said, like, I did add some Denver right before series, right before tip, game five, just like they were plus 150 and two of the three games at home. Like, are you telling me that the Clippers are that much better on a neutral? I just don't really see it.
Hmm.
So I think it's Denver in 7 just because tonight is in LA. But I do think the market is shaded too far in the Clippers' favor for each of the games.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to a blowout last night. The Rockets absolutely destroyed the Warriors in the first half, 76-49 at half. Shot making was certainly part of it. The Rockets made a ton of 3-pointers. They got a ton of paint points. Didn't actually win the rebounding battle in the first half, but yeah, this was just a classic. Like, your back's up against the wall, you're going to play with aggression. We'll talk about the Steph stuff as well. But I'll go to you first, Dink. What do you see from the Rockets on how they were able to kind of get this at least live now? They've got to win in San Francisco tomorrow night. But what do you see from Houston getting a really big win last night?
It was just interesting to me how the approach from the start was with Steve Kerr, and some of the comments was sort of like, if this doesn't go well, the travel's like really hard and you might have to pull guys early. Like, just the mentality of that. And I thought Golden State came out flat a little bit defensively, not kind of stopping ball pressure nearly enough. Obviously Houston made some shots early and that helps, but I thought they were a little bit sloppy. I thought they took some quick shots early in possessions, and they just never. It didn't feel like they were like fully locked in this one. And I thought some of the coaching comments, like leading up to the game, were a little bit suspicious and odd. And then he obviously followed through with it with pulling the starters early in the third quarter when the game was really, really out of hand. And so it felt like an exaggerated, amplified version of what you get when teams are down, up 3-1 and go on the road, where you get the home team like really playing for survival, which I think Houston was. But it felt like the guard was let down even more than normal for Golden State, because it was like kind of like, oh, we have this cross country travel that we have to deal with and just one day off, and so like we're already planning on closing this out at home. Is kind of what it felt like to me, which was just an odd approach. But yeah, I think in general, the things that you have to be very optimistic about if you're on the Houston side of things is Amen Thompson finally looked like he had a role in the court. He was dominant in this one with 8 steals and blocks combined, 25 points, got to the rim consistently. They were able to get into transition. They were forcing turnovers kind of early in the first half and getting him into transition. And then he was getting on smaller defenders, which was allowing him to get to the rim instead of kind of getting stuck in the mid-range where he'd been for the first 4 games of the series. So I thought that was great. Fred VanVleet continues to shoot the ball well after really shooting the ball very poorly to start the series. Last 2 games, he's been great from 3, and that just opens up everything else for them. They made a conscious effort to get Jalen Green going very early on, and I thought Jalen Green opened up with strong aggressiveness, kind of off-ball cutting, some things you don't usually see from Jalen Green, to get an and one early in the game. Yeah, I thought Houston brought great energy. I thought Golden State brought really crappy energy. And I thought it was kind of an exacerbated, amplified version of what you see sometimes when the home team is down 3-1. I would expect Golden State to play with a lot more focus and energy in Game 6 at home. It almost seemed like to me that they were looking ahead to kind of planning on doing that.
Yeah, the Warriors are kind of like daring Jalen Green to beat them. They put Buddy Hield on him early, and then to your point, the transition stuff was big. That was really what kind of kept the Warriors in it. The Warriors have been a great transition defense. I think they were last, the Houston transition frequency. They're second to last now after getting some last night. Memphis, the only one worse there. But yeah, I thought that was just a really, really hot start. And then yeah, Fred VanVleet certainly is the big reason why 88 true shooting over the last 2, best in the NBA among guys with 32 minutes per game. But yeah, Austin, anything you want to add from what Dink said on why Houston got back in this?
Yeah. So one interesting thing that they changed is they put Fred in the corner a lot last night, and like Fred might be your best decision maker, but he's also one of the few guys that can reliably shoot right now. And I think Ime was going sort of for this, like, okay, well, Jalen Green is the only above average rebounder we have, and he's probably by far the worst defender of the 8. So like, if he's going to be on the floor, we might as well get the most usage out of Jalen Green. So they had Jalen Green initiate a lot of offense last night. A lot of Jalen Green changing pick and rolls with Fred in the corner. Fred was handling in the non-Green minutes, but like, I'm a known Jalen Green hater, but I have to say I thought he made really good decisions last night. Got into the paint and kicked out when he needed to. It was only, I think, 2 assists, but like, just really good initiating, really good breaking down the defense and not forcing tough shots. He didn't take that many shots, and I thought they were, for the most part, good shots. So if that continues. And then you finally have sort of this, Dylan Brooks, who's an okay 3-point shooter in one corner, and Fred, who's a pretty good 3-point shooter in the other corner. You finally have just a little bit of spacing. So I thought that worked well. I have been with you guys that I kept thinking Jabari Smith would play more, and he hasn't really. And then he finally was. Him and Tari were the two rotation members to try and carry home that blowout, and it did not go well. And so I'm a bit bearish on Jabari after, seemingly this was the spot the last two games to play him, and they didn't. So I'm a bit bearish on Jabari ever kind of coming through in this series. The last thing to note is just sort of like it'll be hard for the Rockets to win this series just down 3-2, having to go to Golden State. But if you look at a lot of process standpoints, they've won all 5 games from a process standpoint. They should be up at least 3-2. And so the optimism for the Rockets is like they should be winning based on the number of shots they're getting and the quality of shots they're getting. They should be beating the Warriors every game so far. And all they have to do is continue to do what they have been doing.
Yeah, I was going to add a few things. Their 3 losses, they shot 57% from the line, I think the stat was. They shot 17-20 in the first half at the free throw line. And then, as you're alluding to there, why Jabari hasn't been playing? Double big. That's been massive for them. They are now at a plus 32.2 net rating in their minutes. They lead the NBA in 2-man combo defensive rating, 85.5 defensive rating against the freaking Warriors. That's been huge. And then, Dylan Brooks, 9-20 on catch and shoot threes. You'll take that all day. So he's been pretty impactful. I'm with you. Like the Rockets should be winning this series if they didn't fumble the ball at the freaking line and turn the ball over in key spots. Like this is, like I was saying the last time we potted, I always like overrate experience, and like we're feeling it now. But the Rockets like should win. It's just they've got to put 2 more games together. I don't know if they could do that. Think anything you want to add there?
Yeah, just that I got it really wrong on the double big stuff and them needing to get away from it because it's worked really well for them and been really effective. I'm surprised at how well it's worked kind of on an offensive perspective, but I think Şengün's just been so good that it's kind of carried some of that. And Adams is, doing some of his little unseen, hidden statistical stuff, like, holding the guy in the dunker spot that's trying to help Şengün. Nobody gets it called, like kind of creating space in weird ways and weird angles for the other guys. And Adams has been, good on the defensive end, being able to stay out and disrupt things. I mean, even having the strip steal on Buddy Hield in game 4. So I think that's worked really well. And also with Jabari, Aaron Holiday entered the rotation yesterday to give them some extra coverage on, Steph minutes. It was very short, but just in general, getting another body into the rotation and going from 8 to 9 is kind of a big deal when it didn't impact the starters' minutes very much. Their minutes at half were trending still for upper 30s. So Jabari and Tari both kind of got hit there a little bit by Aaron Holiday getting into the rotation as well. But yeah, I'm interested to see if they can pull it off on the road and push this to a game 7. I'm not super optimistic, but I will say, like, this veteran Golden State team, them going up 3-1 and talking about the wear and tear of the schedule had my eyes light up, like, oh, you're already concerned about this when you're ahead 3-1, when you're playing from ahead and you're already kind of noting these concerns publicly. So I'm interested to see. The Warriors, obviously, they had to fight for every ounce to get into the playoffs from the play-in, and they've been playing these types of playoff level games for them for over a month now. And it's Jimmy's been banged up this series. Steph has been banged up a little bit. Like I'm interested to see how Golden State's able to kind of work their way through the playoffs if they can advance here and then have a very hungry and aggressive Minnesota team to deal with next. I would be surprised if this championship mentality Golden State team with Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry and Draymond Green blew a 3-1 lead. It would be surprising to me. It would be ironic and very funny, but it would be surprising to me if that was ultimately the case. So I think they close this out in 6.
Yep, I'm with that. Austin, sounds like you pretty much agree. You and I are pretty much just seeing the same thing. Like they should win, but like they don't. That's the nature of the playoffs. That's the nature of having quote unquote championship DNA. Kind of sounds like you're on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, they blew 3 games they should have won. Like going forward, you expect them to be the better team, but like you have to parlay a win in Golden State with another win at home, and it's just odds wise, it's probably the Warriors, but like the Rockets are probably the better team. So yeah, I think it's I think it's Warriors in 6. Just like they got to rest, and the Rockets did have to bring their starters back at the end, and this is sort of like they're going to give it their best bullet. But
Yep.
but I do think like the Rockets are quote unquote live.
I agree. Yep. So on just got to execute. I think they've got the game plan, and Udoka talked about that. He's like, hey, we got to their actions, took them at what they wanted to do, and they did for sure. Like Steph got 2 freaking shots up in the first quarter, like in almost 10 minutes. So I definitely, it's as long as they execute and as long as they make free throws and hit their shots at a decent clip, like I think they're definitely live for sure. But not betting on it there. Let's go to the Knicks and Pistons series. Another wacky one, another one where this team should have won. Obviously, we don't need to talk about the Hardaway Jr. foul at the end, but that 21-0 run at the end, the Pistons starters have been freaking awesome. They're the best lineup in the playoffs by a lot, and net rating by like 10 percentage points better. They're 10 net rating points better than anyone. They're first in offensive rebounding rate, first in defensive rebounding rate. They were really good down the stretch. I certainly want to talk about Asar, but Detroit's like certainly live. They have like handily outplayed the Knicks in the vast majority of the aspects. I mean, yeah, there's a lot I want to talk about here. I'll hand it to you, Dink, but I like the way that the Knicks covered the pick and roll was really bad. I want to talk about that in a second. But yeah, what have you been seeing from how the Knicks have, or not all? I think the Pistons are more likely to beat the Knicks are than the Rockets are. So thoughts on that, and then thoughts what you've been seeing from this series.
Yeah, I think that's fair as well. I think the Knicks, there's certainly some doubts about kind of playoff series closers on their team, right? Like Brunson's been awesome in the playoffs and his performances have been elevated in the playoffs pretty consistently, but the rest of the team, Mikhail, OG, Cat, very inconsistent. And basically the series is gone with how good Cat's been when Cat comes out and plays very aggressively offensively and sets the tone and puts pressure on Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren in terms of their ability to stay out on the floor. New York's played very well. When he has been a little bit more passive and not as involved, those guys have kind of roamed free, and defensively they've been able to just kind of focus in on Brunson, and they have pieces to disrupt Brunson. They haven't really given him a ton of problems until Game 5. He was pretty comfortable, the whole series. Even Game 1, where he struggled the first half, I thought he was getting great looks. So, maybe Asar is figuring some stuff out to keep his hands to himself and stay out of foul trouble and be able to stay in the games a little bit. But ultimately, yeah, I think Detroit's very live at home. They can put a lot of pressure on the Knicks because, I think the big difference between the two teams up 3-2 here is the Knicks came in to this season with all these expectations around them. A first round playoff exit would be a huge disappointment in terms of the expectations coming into the season. You push them home to a Game 7 at home. I know MSG crowd will be awesome in trying to carry that Knicks team, but I wonder if you see some tentativeness in those types of situations. So I think Detroit's pretty live. They need Asar to continue to play well. They need basically for them to pull this off, they need one of Asar, Beasley, or Tim Hardaway Jr. to play very well. Because I think Cade's been really solid. I think Duren's played a little bit above expectation, honestly. We'll see if he's able to continue to maintain this. But I think they're in the games that they've been in control or had the opportunity to win, they've had one of Asar, Beasley, or Tim Hardaway Jr. play very well. I think that's very important to them. If they get a game where all three of those guys are not playing very well, I think the series is over. But so far, they've been able to find a guy. It was Tim Hardaway Jr. one night. It was Asar in Game 5. Beasley a little bit in Game 1. It'll be interesting to see if they can find another great game from one of those three tonight.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that. You mentioned Duren and kind of tying together my pick and roll point I wanted to make. Like Cat, when he's like showing more, they're getting killed there. And I rewatched all of Duren's assists. 4 of them are on the short roll. 3 of them to Asar and the dunker. 1 with the kick out to Tim Hardaway Jr. Like they are killing him with that play. Cade's been reading that double so well and playing the 4-on-3 like every time. And the Pistons are getting such good looks there, which is like we talked about it last time you and I did a pod. Like the Pistons are getting rim pressure, and it hasn't been enough, and it hasn't been the right way. And I thought they really did that. And I thought Cade, despite being taken out of the game, obviously he's been running too. He's third in transition possessions per game against the Knicks, which is unusual. But yeah, anything you want to add on just, I don't know. I almost want to talk about Cat. Like Cat has been really bad defensively since Game 1. Anything you noticed on Cat, and anything you want to add on Detroit's offense, Austin?
Yeah, I would agree with you that the difference between Cat and Mitchell Robinson defensively is humongous. And so like if you're playing Cat that many minutes, you need to emphasize him on offense. Like you need to get maximum Cat on the offensive end. Because I don't know that there's an obvious Knicks starter to boot for Mitchell Robinson, but I do think the Mitchell Robinson minutes have gone really well, and I think he's just historically an underrated player on the minutes that he does play. And especially against the Pistons defense that doesn't really help anyways. Like I think it's okay to run a non-shooter. Like I think more Mitchell Robinson makes sense to me. And it isn't just the rim protection that Cat lacks or the rebounding that Cat's decent at, but Mitchell Robinson's really good at. Is like Mitchell Robinson's been getting his hands on deflections and stuff. He's been breaking up a lot of that stuff that like the other Knicks players just outside of OG, like they don't really force turnovers. And like Mitchell Robinson's just causing a lot of havoc. And that is something that I think the Knicks would consider. I would be betting the Knicks game 6 if Hart and Brunson hadn't gotten banged up to end the previous game. I don't know how bad it is. I don't think either of them are that bad. But just some minor things to keep in mind.
Yeah, Brunson's, I'm pretty sure he's fine. He just had that little ankle tweak, and he's kind of like just checked out, make sure it's okay. He's had this ankle thing like he's concerned about. Hart a little bit worried he could be affected for sure. But yeah, I don't know, man.
That's the path, though. That's the path for more Mitch. The more Mitch would have to come at the expense of either Cat or Hart, because I don't think you can have Cat. You think Mikal? I think
so.
I don't know. I think the spacing gets really challenging with Hart and Mitch out there just generally, unless Hart's willing to pull the trigger. But like Hart's also got some wrist stuff. Like remember last year when he had the wrist issue and he just stopped shooting threes altogether. So I think if we see Mitch emphasized anymore, I think it's more likely to come from Hart than Mikal would be my guess.
Yeah, and then their offense has been not Cat, and you talked about emphasizing Cat. Cat hasn't been running as much pick and roll stuff. That was when they were really humming earlier this year. That hasn't been as prevalent. And then just the role players not helping too much there. Anything that their offense hasn't been great either. I talked about the first unit like really taking them away. But before I hand it to you, I got to talk more about Asar. Just the on-ball defense. I've been begging for him to play more, and he finally did. I thought that was a big impact. And like I said, putting more pressure on the rim without Duren was big there. But anything you've seen from the offense, Austin, that could kind of get them back on track? Because, they're like most, except for really, a couple, like the last few games, it's been kind of a grind.
Yeah, their ball movement, which was never great all season, has really come to a halt in the playoffs. Like the ball is stopping so much with Brunson, and it's really hard to say outside of funnel the ball more to Cat what else they can do, because a lot of like Mikal and OG and Mitch aren't even Josh Hart's more of a secondary playmaker. Like they don't have a lot of other options, so I don't necessarily have a solution if I were Tibbs. But like what it is now is not good basketball. I think Drew mentioned this early in the series, but like maybe more Cat post touches seems like good things happen when Cat touches the ball deep in the paint. Yep. And like it's not like the Pistons are denying Cat so hard that they can't. Like they saw. Remember, was it game 1 that he really was not aggressive, and then game 2 that he was aggressive? Whichever game it was, I think it was game 2. They started running like
it was 2 to 3.
2 to 3. Yeah, in game 3 they ran some like cross screens so they could come across the post, duck in, and get touches from the other side. Like there's no reason they can't do that. There's 24 seconds on shot clock. Like they can do it so often. Brun's got a bunch of easy assists just hitting Cat on the cross screen, duck in on the other side. Like why wouldn't they run that more?
Yeah, that's what I was going to note. I had it in matchups, but the like late clock stuff, they're at like 24%, 7 seconds or under. It's the highest in the first round by like a few percentage points. That's been an issue. Like they're getting such late offense, and that's not good. You don't want to be up against the clock and make like 4 shots. We've seen like how many times that like the Knicks like, oh god, here it goes, bombs, and like it was working in game 4. They like got those to go down. But yeah, Dink, do you have anything else you want to add? And we could kind of make picks.
No, I think Austin noted it that for so many good things happen when Cat is touching the ball in the paint offensively. His aggression, it carries over to the defensive side when he's engaged defensively. Like game 1, he was fantastic defensively in that game, and since then it's been very up and down the series, more down than up. And I just think they need to make a really, really focused approach in the first quarter to get so many good things can happen if you get Cat aggressive offensively. And if you can get through either Jalen Duren or Tobias Harris with foul trouble, you start to thin out the options that Detroit has, because what they're getting away with right now, right, is putting Tobias Harris on Karl-Anthony Towns. Well, if Tobias Harris is in foul trouble, then you saw I think it was game 4 where Tobias got into foul trouble. you saw that they went to Duren on Cat, and Cat was just destroying Duren like immediately offensively. And so I think they really have to work to be aggressive to get like Brunson can get his looks anytime he wants during the game, and he's going to have the ball in his hands all game, so he can find his rhythm. I think Brunson and the Knicks need to make an emphasis to get Cat involved very early.
Yeah, to that stat I was inserting was 27% of their shots with 7 seconds or less in the shot clock. That's a huge number. Pistons at 19% for what it's worth. And also the rim finishing has been really bad. 54% at the rim is like 8 percentage points below the last team in the NBA, the Raptors. There, but yeah, Austin, anything you want to add? It sounds like you're thinking Knicks are going to get this tonight. Anything else you want to wrap up before you make your official pick?
I'm not betting this one. I just don't.
Yeah.
There are too many things that the Knicks are doing that I don't like that I would need to have confidence that they fix. And like Detroit really hungry at home. Their home crowd's been awesome. I would have been betting the Knicks if there were like less injury concerns and less concerns. I'm probably staying away. I'm probably going to go Knicks in 7. I would be pretty surprised if the Pistons parlay back-to-back wins here, but I think the Pistons are definitely live for Game 6.
Yeah, I'm getting Knicks in 7 as well. That was the pick. I've got a boatload of Pistons stuff. So I've got Pistons for a series. I've also got them to get my biggest position was the 5.5 games over plus 2.5. So I've cashed like 80% of my Pistons stuff. So another win would be great. But anything you want to? Sounds like you're on the same Dink.
I think so. I have less confidence in the Knicks closing things out than I do the Warriors. Just less confidence in coaching staff and players and sort of the weight of the expectations. And while MSG is a great environment, it is also a little bit front runny as an environment. Like the you can feel the nerves in situations when things are going poorly. And I worry about that in Game 7. So I think Knicks in 7, but I feel less confident about it than the Golden State Rockets series.
Yeah, for sure. So it's pretty crazy. We're going into like the last weekend of the first round, and we only got one matchup so far, and it's a doozy. It's the two best offenses of the first round. I mean, my God, the Cavs offense just outrageous. I don't know who had this stat, I forget, but it was the best offensive rating for any first round ever. 138.4 offensive rating, 120 in just the half court against like a pretty good defense there. But the Pacers were also really good offensively. They were second in offensive. Actually, no, they got passed a little bit. They went down the last game, 119.4 overall. But yeah, this is like, talk about, Spider-Man meme style, like two offenses that like just crush you in pick and roll. Cavs are first in pick and roll efficiency by a lot. They destroyed Miami in pick and roll again. The Pacers are a pretty good pick and roll defending team, headlined by Andrew Nembhard there. But yeah, it's very much offense versus offense stuff. There's like so much I want to talk about here. But yeah, I'll hand it to you blind, Austin. Besides that, but what are you looking for this series for either team to kind of have an edge?
Yeah, so I think I kind of agree with the market where it is. Like I do think that the Cavs should be heavily favored here. If you think about like how the Pacers can crack the Cavs, I think Evan Mobley is like probably your dream defender for Pascal Siakam. Like I can't think of a defender I would rather build in a lab to guard Pascal Siakam than Evan Mobley. And I just think like in order for and they're not going to help off of Halliburton. If you just saw the way that they defended Miami, it was like,
yep.
Take away the paint and take away the corner threes and just funnel you into this sort of elbow free throw line jumper stuff. And like, who really on the Pacers is going to do that? It's going to be the guards. It's going to be Halliburton and Nembhard. And like, neither of that, like, if, how are the Pacers going to generate good offense just not helping off Halliburton, just letting him take those little, free throw line jumpers and the floaters? Like, I don't know how you can do that for a whole game and generate good offense. So like, if the Pacers can't get into transition, I just have a hard time seeing anybody but sort of like Halliburton scoring off of isolation or off of like a pick and roll where he dropped coverage. Like, I don't know how they're going to score that much. I don't think Nesmith and Siakam and Miles Turner are going to be great this series. Siakam might get there based off of shot attempts alone, but I think the Pacers going to have to. Hallie's going to have to have a really good series. Punishing this sort of defensive coverage, and then
I was
on the Cavs side. Go for it. No, go for it.
Go ahead. That's all you. Go.
Okay.
You got it.
I was just going to go to the Cavs side. I don't think that they have great perimeter defenders, but just the way they have the double bigs with Evan Mobley, like it seems to work. Like if you just contain penetration enough and don't help off your guy in the corners, like the defense does work, especially because their offense is so good and they're so up tempo that their defense doesn't have to be perfect. With that being said, if the Cavs do fall behind at any point in the series, which we haven't seen, or any point in games, I can see them going away from Jared Allen a bit late in games. We had Miami is a good time to play Jared Allen, but maybe in this series, if they're down 7 early fourth, I could see Kenny going to Mobley at the 5, and I think this could be more of a DeAndre Hunter or even Ty Jerome series if they do want to go single big. So I look for maybe more DeAndre Hunter minutes and less Jared Allen minutes if it does get close.
Yeah, I'm in agreement that the bigs advantage is huge. But I was really impressed by Jared Allen. His ability to guard in space is like a game changer. That's what killed the Bucks. Like, their bigs could not guard in space. They were late to rotate. That was really bad. And look at all the steals. Like, Jared Allen had 10 steals and he shot 21 and 27 from the field. He had 10 steals and 6 misses. Just absolutely. I thought, and Kenny Atkins talked about that, and that's going to be big if they can kind of play him a little bit higher at the level a little bit more. If they're going to run that Miles Turner pick and roll with him, I think that's going to be really big. You mentioned Evan Mobley from a defensive standpoint. Obviously, that's awesome. But I think one thing that's also huge in this series is when Mobley is playing the 5 and when Miles Turner's not on the court. The Pacers got no answers there, man. So Mobley in those non-Miles Turner minutes when Jared's off the floor, that is when I think the Cavs could. That's when we're going to see what the Cavalanche is. When it's going to be him and Mitchell running a lot of pick and roll stuff, really, really putting it on them. So I think that advantage there. The Pacers had some depth. The Pacers' depth killed the Bucks' depth. But this is a new animal. This is Ty Jerome. This is Sam Merrill. We'll talk about Dean Wade. DeAndre Hunter as well. I think DeAndre Hunter will have a pretty big series. But the depth in the front court and Jared Allen's ability to guard in space this year is why I think the Cavs are on such another level. And as Austin said, transition has to be a thing. There are 6th in transition points on the season. If they don't have their transition game, it's going to be trouble, like sweep trouble, from my opinion. But yeah, what do you think about this series?
I think it's interesting because if you just kind of lined up teams to potentially go against Cleveland and Cleveland's really potent offensive backcourt with Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Adrian Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith would be 2 of the better combo guards to be able to defend those guys. And in past iterations of the Cavs, where the ball movement sometimes got slowed down in the playoffs and different things, I think that would match up really well. But this version of the Cavs with Kenny Atkinson, they're moving the ball. People are moving constantly, and you're not getting a lot of isolation, kind of one-on-one defense. So I think some of the strengths that I would look at for the Pacers in terms of how they'd match up, in terms of trying strength on strength, I think they're mitigated a little bit by kind of Kenny Atkinson's offense and kind of how many pieces are in motion constantly here. And as Austin alluded to, on the other end of the floor, I think Cleveland's whole recipe has been we're going to move the ball, we're going to move offensively, and then on the other side, we're going to prevent you from moving because we're going to have these 2 bigs kind of in the middle that clog things up in the middle, and we're going to make you play one-on-one. And so I think you're going to see 2 somewhat different styles of basketball when these 2 teams theoretically want to play the same type of style of basketball, because I think Cleveland is better adept at or better suited to really thwarting what Indiana wants to do offensively. I will say I've underrated Indiana in 3 or 4 straight playoff series. So I want to note that I've definitely been on the wrong side of my evaluation of Indiana. I think they have a lot of guys who have raised their game in the playoffs, Nembhard and Nesmith in particular, and Halliburton as well. So I don't want to paint them as a pushover here by any means, but I think the Cavs are a bit of a juggernaut that is not seen as a juggernaut just generally by the market. And so I ended up taking Cavs in this series. I took Cavs -1.5 games at -180. I'm a big believer in the Cavs, and I just think if Evan Mobley plays well, I don't see a way that Indiana stays close in this series. If Evan Mobley plays poorly, that opens the door for things. But as Mike alluded to in the second units, Mobley's got such an advantage offensively. I think he's got a pretty good advantage defensively over Pascal Siakam. And so I think this should be a very big Evan Mobley series as a player that can play in transition and get up the floor as well defensively when the Pacers want to run. I think the Cavs, although on paper I would think that the roster of the Pacers matches up okay with the Cavs, I really think that to disrupt the Cavs, you need more size to disrupt the motion of their offense. And I don't think the Pacers are going to disrupt the motion of their offense very much.
Yeah, and the Pacers were a really rim-heavy team last year that kind of changed a little bit this year. But the Cavs rim protection, number 2 in the NBA, and based on field goal percentage, they've been awesome there. But yeah, Austin, anything you want to add from a big picture? But I want to talk about the end of the bench because I think that's like I talked about the depth and the advantages there. Are there any guys off the bench that you think could either get pushed up or down? I talked about Evan Mobley. We saw Jarris Walker make a pretty big jump in the last series. I don't know if you want to do that against Evan Mobley in the second unit. So, off the bench, obviously Ty Jerome comes to mind. But is there anybody on either team you think could get emphasized or de-emphasized?
Yeah, I mentioned DeAndre Hunter earlier. Just like if the Cavs do go single big, Hunter seems like the most obvious sort of matchup fit against the Pacers, and like the reason that they went to go get him was something like this, matching up against um, a faster, smaller team. Not to bring up the Wolves a ton, but like I do want to mention like what I like about the Wolves is that it's not that their best five is the best five, but like they have pieces that can match up against every single team. They're matchup proof, and I think the Cavs have some element of that as well, where like they have enough chess pieces that they can match up well against any team. Um, and one last note about the Cavs, I think the only Cavs and OKC are the only two teams where like we haven't even seen them quote unquote try. Like the meme where you just sit up in your chair. Like we haven't seen them sit up in their chair yet. Like they haven't had to play their guys like 36 to 40 minutes yet. And like as good as their bench is, which is really good, like their starting five is awesome. And like we haven't seen them really need to do that yet. And so like there's just a whole nother gear that they can go to that no other team besides OKC has been able to sort of preserve yet. And like Darius Garland, like there is a toe thing, but like if this were a closer series, I'm pretty confident he would have played game 4, if not 3 and 4. And like they still, crush the Heat and like they just haven't had to really push any of their guys. The fatigue level is so low on the entire roster. So I have Cavs here. I haven't bet it. I think the price is pretty fair, but I think it's Cavs in 5 or Cavs in 6.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'll add. Not only did they crush they beat Miami with the widest point differential ever. Just like a freaking Miami, like the boogeyman. But yeah, I didn't want to weigh in on my own question. So I don't know. I think they probably got to play Thomas Bryant more. We saw Thomas Bryant get like kicked out of the rotation besides like a rebounding possession. I think he could come back to life to be like a bigger body on Mobley, perhaps at the expense of Jarris Walker. They're going to need an on-ball defender. We talked about Nembhard, who I kind of want to talk about more. Nembhard, I think Nembhard is like, if the Pacers make this close, like it's Andrew Nembhard, or it's just like nuclear shooting. Talked about the rim defense, but Nembhard is as good as it gets as guy who can guard Darius Garland there. But yeah, Dink, and then I'll add I think Hunter and I think Dean Wade too. I think if you want to run a little more switch heavy scheme, we saw that utilized a lot late in the Miami series. I think that makes a little bit of sense. We know Dean Wade's pretty comfortable on lead guards, so I think pushing him up and maybe pushing Sam Merrill down makes a little bit of sense to me. Just to kind of push up your defense overall. I think you got enough offense to go around there. Dink, do you have any thoughts on kind of down the line? I still got so much more I want to talk about, but let me just get one more. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree with the potential of Sam Merrill getting de-emphasized a little bit. It doesn't seem like the ideal series for him with an Indiana team that just doesn't love to help off differently and is like pretty disciplined with shooters. The Jarris versus Thomas Bryant, I could see that with Thomas Bryant. I could also see Obi Toppin. I'm just interested to see if they condense things. It was very clear that the approach against Milwaukee was like, we're going to play 10. We might even play 11 because we're going to use all these fouls against Giannis. And I think it was just such a tactical approach to like try to make sure that they had enough depth and coverage against Giannis specifically. And I'm interested to see if they tighten this to go 8-9. They don't really have like the clear guys you would tighten to do that. You've got McConnell and Mathurin that are kind of locked in off the bench, but they're also at positions that, you have redundancy at, and you need size and depth here. So like where could it get condensed? I think Bryant, I think Toppin are like interesting names to consider there. But I do think Jarris Walker, he was very valuable in terms of the athleticism and the ability to push and not be a zero on offense because of their ability to get out and run and use athleticism also in the half court to annoy Milwaukee. That's not going to be an issue for the Cavs. So I think it's a much tougher series for Jarris Walker for sure. But that front court in general, I think is like a tougher one to figure out how it's going to shake out, because I could see either, Thomas Bryant and Obi Toppin both bring a little bit of floor spacing to things. Thomas Bryant a little bit more size to compete on the rebounding side with Evan Mobley, but Thomas Bryant's not a very good rebounder, and Thomas Bryant operating in space defensively, just like Obi Toppin, not that great. So that second unit, the second unit front court is an issue. I think in some ways that they'll miss Isaiah Jackson, who I think had a little bit more to offer in this type of series.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll add a couple other things, just from more like half court stuff. So just Indiana sees a ton of zone. The Cavs play the second most zone in the NBA. I'm curious to see how much that's in play. And then, like I was saying, we saw what was the big quote from the last round. It was Tyler Hero getting called out for his defense and being hunted, right? Like Halliburton gonna get hunted. So like Austin, how could they like protect Halliburton in pick and roll game? Do they like hedge more? I don't know. Do you want to play switch with Halliburton? Like I don't want to do that. So like how do they handle this ridiculous pick and roll attack? I think that's like I don't think they can, which is kind of why I'm like pretty heavy Cavs. Do you have any thoughts on how they handle pick and roll stuff? Because it's going to be a heavy dose of it.
Not really. I will say like I've historically been a bit lower on the Pacers, just like Drew. And like they've generally been pretty good in the playoffs. I will say like I think the market has come up on them a bit sort of the second half of the year that the Pacers are actually might be like a legitimately decent team. And like I think you would say like, but they have the same personnel they've had for the first half of the season and they had, at the end of last season. But I think a big difference here is like they had an extremely unwillingness to waver from their defensive scheme, right? Like they're just going to not help off and they're going to fun up in the Miles Turner and they're destroyed by size. And this year in the second half of the season, they've shown at least a little bit of willingness to deviate from that. Like the way that they did help on Giannis more in this series than they had in the past. They're allowing a bit more assists. They're allowing a bit more like if they're still really low in all the off ball stuff, but it's a little less extreme than as in the past. And I think like going to the extreme that they had was not like their defense was very poor for a playoff team. And so like the difference in the Pacers now than ever before is like they've shown a bit willingness to move off of their defensive scheme. And so like especially with the Cavs that don't have a lot of, especially in their starting unit, don't have a ton of shooting. Like you have Strus and you have Donovan to some level, but like I think that they could and should probably start helping a little more. Like they like Mobley and Allen down low is going to be a load, and especially protecting Halliburton. Like I do think they should and they will sort of like help a little more and sort of like bend their schemes more than they had in prior years.
Yeah, and that should note the Pacers defense is top 10 since January 1st. They've been really good. People always think of them as like some offensive, and I hate when people do that. Like, oh, they play so fast. Like, they played like a very slowed down, methodical kind of a game when they like were in half court. But anyways, yeah, that's most of the stuff I want to say. I'll just say that I think that the Cavs are really good at taking away like assists and stuff because of their length. I mentioned Jared Allen; they allowed the 7th fewest assists per possession. I think that's going to really work to their advantage, and they just have a lot of looks. We talked about this, Dink and I were like, maybe we could talk about the Lakers. We're not going to, but like having more in your bag, and the Cavs have like such a deep bag on both sides, but from a personnel standpoint, from a scheme standpoint, it's too much, man. I just don't know how the Pacers can hang around. Take anything you want to add, and we can kind of just get to picks.
Yeah, I think that length that you're talking about defensively, like it matters a lot because they're also very disciplined positionally defensively. This is the thing that like coming out of college, everybody was so excited about Evan Mobley and comparing him to like Tim Duncan and stuff. It's just like positionally, he's always kind of in the right spot. Jared Allen's very good at that. And so what the Pacers really try to take advantage of is when you get out of position because they're playing fast and they're trying to make you make quick decisions and then get you out of position. And then they're very willing to move the ball and move the ball to open shooters. And the Cavs just have so much length and they're in positionally the right spots at times that I think it's going to be hard. I think you're going to see more late shot clock stuff from the Pacers because of that length. And I don't feel like I don't feel like Indiana can put that kind of pressure on Cleveland defensively. So that's the big thing for me. If I'm an Indiana fan, I'm going to be looking at ultimately like as a predictor of how well I think we're doing. How much time is off the shot clock on average in possessions, because I think they're going to need to be getting early and mid shot clock offense. I think late shot clock offense is going to be really, really challenging against Cleveland.
Yep. I'm with you on that. Austin, anything else from you? Or it sounds like you kind of made your pick, but if you want to make an official one.
Yeah, the only real optimism I have for the Pacers is sort of me being a bit low on the Cavs heading to the playoffs. Like, I bet Heat Game 4, which is one of the worst bets in history. Basically, my thesis here is that like historically, outside of the prime Warriors, like these teams that rely on ball movement in the regular season and run these huge offensive ratings tend to suffer more of a playoff penalty than other teams. You think about like the Atlanta Hawks that won 60 games, like teams like that just tend to struggle because a lot of that like lazy back cutting and motion offensive stuff sort of like goes away in the playoffs, and then they just don't have a lot of reps with the ISO possessions, or like their teams don't have as many players that are used to taking those isolated shots, and so like their offense suffers more than any other team. And so like I was sort of thinking like, sure, the Cavs could play their starters more, but also like a lot of their easy offense that they generated in the regular season may not be accessible in the playoffs, and what happens when they're punched in the mouth for the first time. That is sort of like my only optimism for the Pacers. Is I don't think it comes in the series, but at some point when the Cavs face like real adversity, I'm sort of like curious what other levers they have when they're easy motion offense and they're sort of like all of this man and ball movement sort of goes away. Like, can they generate efficient shots? But for this series, I think we're going to see a lot of shots thrown for the Cavs and a lot of shots sort of in this like mid to long twos for the Pacers. And I just don't see how that's going to win. So I'm going to say officially Cavs in 5. I would be surprised if the Cavs series even goes to 7.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm with you, and I think that, like I said, Nembhard has to smash. Like, and Nembhard, like almost, or he did, beat the Knicks. Yeah, he's been awesome. He'd have to have a huge series, and yeah, like you said, they just it's going to be tough to score against all that size, and they just have so many ways to beat you. And my counter to your easy out, like, they're going to pick and roll them to death, man. Like, that's how I think they're going to offense. And it's too good. It's the best in the NBA. And I don't think that as good as the Pacers were, and they were very good at stopping that play, I just don't think they've got enough. I think if they do oversell, then okay, you're going to be death by Mobley or death by open shooting. Yeah. They're like top 3 or 4 in catch and shoot stuff. Like, there's just like, unless the Cavs like totally brick it, like, I don't know how. So I'm picking Cavs in 5 as I'm on Cavs -1.5, -160, -170. Like, I'm taking it all. Think anything for you.
Yeah, I think their best defensive options against the pick and roll is going to be, Turner and drop and Nembhard and Chase and but the problem is it's not going to be Nembhard and Chase. It's going to be Hallie and Chase because they're gonna isolate, they're gonna hunt, and they're gonna find the matchups. And trying to rely on Garland and Ty Jerome and Donovan Mitchell missing floaters and mid range stuff. And those guys are all very good at those shots. So I think like
the best.
Yeah. So I'm with you. Cavs in 5, my official prediction. I'll make it a trio of Cavs and 5s here. And I'm excited. I think the Pacers can do some things that test the Cavs a little bit, but I still think the Cavs are at just another level higher that, like, I think we're going to need to get to hard mode against, Boston or a Western Conference opponent before we really see what we learn from the Cavs.
Yeah, curious to see what the lines come out for Boston against likely the Knicks. But yeah, I think this is super fun. Austin, it was great having you on. Definitely do this again. Anything from you to mention or shout out? Or this is great. Your insights are always so appreciated as a fellow like matchups boy and all that kind of stuff. This is great getting your input. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
Nope, nothing on my end. I just love talking hoops, especially playoff hoops, and this is a fun time. So I'd be talking about it with my friends if I wasn't on a podcast anyways.
Love it. And then Dink, anything else you want to mention and could promo it up and get us out of here?
Yeah, as always, appreciate you guys listening, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. If you could leave a rating and review, that will help circulate our content and get more ears on our takes, which we'd always appreciate. If you're interested in checking out any of the premium content at Establish a Run during the playoffs, you can go to establishorun.com/NBA-subscribe for more details on our premium product offerings. We will be dropping the prices on the props package as the games sort of dwindle down here, so more details to come on that, but in advance of the second round of the playoffs, so there will be a price decrease coming up. DFS stuff still chugging along with shows with myself, Mike Gallagher, Squirrel Patrol, John Breslin. So we're very, very proud of the work that we're doing. Check us out over at establishorun.com/NBA-subscribe.
Excited for the games tonight. Go Pistons tonight. I don't care about Game 7. Appreciate you guys listening. Catch you guys next time.